Welcome everybody back to the garage here. It's a blistering 85 degrees in the shade here in Florida in mid-April, early April. And I wanted to do a video today and share with you something that I have seen over the years and try to tell you what the problem is and then give you some guidance on things to do and not to do. Going to these shows, I see people that buy engines. Sometimes they buy them at the shows, sometimes they buy them at the auction, and they get real excited about it and they want to go home and see if they can get it running. And the first thing they do is start pulling the flywheels. And I want to show you why that's a mistake, why you shouldn't do that, and hopefully it'll save you from ruining an engine. So over here, you recall from one of my last videos, is a 1 3/4 horse Nelson Brothers Model P. I was putting this engine back together and I got looking at it and realized what was going on, and realized that I had other engines that had the same problems, so I wanted to share those with you. I'm going to put a straight edge on this push rod here. This is the push rod for this engine, and hopefully I can get a good angle for you. If you can see that gap right there between the straight edge and the push rod. So this push rod would have went into the engine going this way, and what had happened, or what it looks like to me, is the push rod would have been in here, would have went over to the head with the exhaust valve. And when I got this engine, the exhaust lever was broken and I had to get a reproduction made, and this is it here. So what I see a lot happening is people will get these engines, they'll have the push rod on there, or the exhaust lever on there, excuse me, and they go to turn an engine that may have a stuck valve, and all that force comes through and it ends up breaking something. In this case, it bent the push rod that I just showed you over there, but also broke off this exhaust lever. I think a very similar thing happened over here. If you remember, this is a 4-horse Waterloo contract engine I'm working on. And while the push rod was good on this one, you'll see here that the rocker arm is busted. Let me get my pointer. This is the rocker arm that came on this engine. You see right here, it's been welded, where they tried to fix where they broke before, and then brazed right here. Also, this gear had teeth missing here, broke off here, and then down on the other side. I was not able to replace this gear. I had to get a reproduction made, and this rocker arm here also, exhaust lever, I was not able to find one, and so I had to get a reproduction made for it also. So this would have been a scenario where somebody would have come out and grabbed the flywheel, try to turn it. Maybe the valve was stuck, or the rocker arm was not loose, or a gear was stuck, and they started cranking on the flywheel, and all that motion terminated somewhere and broke the gear and the rocker arm. Let me give you an example on this Fairbanks Morse here. You can imagine a flywheel being up here. You turn in the flywheel, and if this gear is stuck, it's not going anywhere. If you keep cranking on that flywheel, something's got to give, and it's usually the teeth that go out on these things. If the gear is loose and the exhaust valve here is stuck, now you're putting all this force going all the way through here into the rocker arm, and this exhaust valve is not giving up. So now all that force you're putting into the flywheel is going to break it. It's going to break something. It may break a rocker arm like it did here, or crack it. It may break the gear like it did here. It'll be on the engine there, or it could bend this push rod, or any number of things, depending on what's stuck and how much force you put on it. So you get home from the auction, you get your new engine home from the auction, you get your new engine home from the sale or the engine show, and you go to cranking on the flywheel, and this is the damage that you can cause. So the question is, what do you do? I got my new engine at the sale. I'm excited about it. I want to see if it runs. I want to see whatever the scenario is. And what do you do? Well, I don't know if there's a book that explains it all, but I can tell you what I do. First time I get an engine, I want to come over here and see that the exhaust lever here and the valves, both valves, are free. And that's just as easy as just pushing them in and seeing if they go in and out. Second thing you want to do is make sure this exhaust lever, and this is before you touch the flywheels, is free and clear. Move it around, you'll know instantly if it is, and work from the valve train back to the gears. Make sure all this stuff is clean. Make sure it's, I said clean, but make sure it is free. Most engines will have grease cups. Take them apart, look inside of them, see if there's any grease in them at all, number one. If the grease is a little bit loose, squeeze them down, put some grease in these things. If you got some spray, I use Royal oil, but you can use whatever kind of penetrating lubricant you got, or oil. Oil this stuff down, make sure it's free before you go cranking on these flywheels. Once you get the engine free, I think that's half the battle. The other part is, and all us collectors know this, is you got these gas tanks down here. Whether it's a tank like this that's built into the base, on this 4-horse engine, the gas tank will be exposed on the back. If there's any dirt, if there's any bad gas in there, some people put these gas additives in there that eventually gunk up, and if this motor has been sitting for a while and that bad gas and stuff is in there, even if this whole valve train is free, and as soon as you turn that needle valve on, even if you put fresh gas in there, start cranking that flywheel, these engines are going to pull that gas up into your cylinder and into your combustion chamber. And if it's bad gas, now you have to take a chance of scratching your cylinder and the engine not running. So you get your engine home from the auction, you're all excited, you've checked the valve train is good. Look inside your gas tank, make sure it's clean, make sure it has nothing obstructing. Most tanks are going to have a valve in the bottom, either a check ball or some kind of valve that comes out the side. Make sure all that's clean, because if your check ball is not working, the engine's not going to run. And lastly, I've seen people that they'll do all that stuff, their gas line is clean, and they know their valve train is clear and ready to go, and they come up here and they crank and crank and crank and crank and crank and crank, get it started, and then they realize the spark plug is bad. And so you want to check all that stuff, do a kind of a mechanical review of your engine before you go cranking on these flywheels. If this is an engine you're unfamiliar with, that's what you're going to want to do. Even if it's an engine that's been sitting in the back of your shop for 20 years, you don't know what kind of critter has gotten up there and done things in your motor, make nests and mud daubers. I know down here in Florida, if there's a hole in an engine somewhere, mud daubers is going to get in it. Okay, I hope that helps you. Please don't go get a new engine, start cranking on the flywheels and bust everything up. Thanks.